Welcome to the Metamorphosis Podcast, where we explore the possibilities and processes of personal and community transformation based on the ancient wisdom of Kemet, one of many classical African civilizations, as a foundation. I am Dr. Catherine Lynn Adams, an associate professor of African and African American Studies at Claflin University, where I teach courses on oral and literary traditions of the African world, with an emphasis on interviewing and archiving the stories of our elders. I am serving as a scribe for this project. Joining me is Baba Derrick Jackson. Baba Derrick is the priest and thought leader of Christ Universal Temple, a spiritual community in South Carolina. This episode includes two reflections by Baba Derrick of Queen Nzinga Ratibishi Heru and Jacob Carruthers. They are now ancestors, but they were both very powerful leaders of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, or ASCAC.
There's one person I have to talk about, or I'd be really making a big mistake. Nzinga Ratibishi Heru, the leader of ASCAC for many years. And the first person ever in my life, 10 years before I became a priest, stood up before an ASCAC audience and introduced me as a priest. And I'll never forget how that shook me when she said it. Because there was nothing in anything I ever thought about had to do with being a priest. And I asked her, why did you do that? She said, I don't know. But I do know it hit me as I was introducing you. And I'm like, I ain't never thought about nobody's priest. And she said, and the way she said it, she said, our next priest. I'm like, come on now. Don't put that weight on me like that. It took 10 years for it to happen, or almost 10 years for it to happen. Well, it was 10 years, because this is 1990, and I wasn't ordained until 1999. So it was 10 years for it to happen. But Nzinga and I and Jerome and Bernie, we were like, Jerome, the relationship we had with Nzinga was probably one of the most profound relationships I know I can say I've had with anybody in a leadership position, other than maybe Dolores Washington, but that's another story for another time. But Nzinga really, really, it wasn't what she wrote. It wasn't what she said at an ASCAC conference. It was those behind-the-scene conversations of seeing the human being side of her. What leaders have to endure.
What were you reading at the time in 1990?
What was I reading in 1990? The Destruction of Black Civilization. I was reading 1990. Tony Browder, I think by that time, had come out with his first book. I can't think of the title of the first book he had by then. What's his name? Wallace Budge's book on what he called it, the I can't think of the name of what. Well, I don't even know why Wallace Budge's is, because I don't reference it no more. So you know how you drop something out of your memory when you don't reference it anymore. I was also reading Anacalypsis by Godfrey Higgins. I was reading at that time. I was being introduced to Charles Finch, and Charles Finch introduced us to Gerald Massey work. Ancient Egypt, The Light of the World, The Book of the Beginnings, his Genesis story. I was going back and forth between, let me tell you, profoundly affected me during that time. John G. Jackson, his Man, God, and Civilization, Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth, Christianity Before Christ, Dr. Ben, African Origins of the Three Major Western Religions. So I was seeking out information about somebody named Melchizedek. So people look at me and read, you were reading books like that during that time? Yeah.
For the Tony Browder book, was that the Browder Files?
Browder Files. That's right. Because I don't think he had came out with Nile Valley just yet. I think Nile Valley comes out like 92, 93.
And for the Wallace Budge book, was that the Coming Forth by Day, or was that a different book?
It was a different book. It wasn't called Coming Forth by Day. It was a different title to it, because I know the people at ASCAC had problems with the title, because it suggested
the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
That's exactly what it was. Because I remember Ace lecturing on that and saying it should never be called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It should be called the Coming Forth by Day. No, let me correct myself. The Coming Forth through the night into the light of day.
I asked you about what you are reading, and this is a question that I think came up during one of our study sessions, maybe last year, within the last 2 years. Today, if somebody wanted to begin their journey, what would you suggest they read?
That's a tough one. I would have to ask them, what have they read? I would personalize it to the person's experiences, right? Try to say, if they had no earthly idea, let's just say they're a complete novice. Anthony Browder's not the Browder File, but Anthony Browder's Now Valley Contributions to Civilization works, because we found out that Makaru, Joe Benton, Dr. Gorman, and myself, that for whatever reason, when people read that book, they don't challenge the information in there. We used to start a study group with Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, right? People will walk away mad. And they wouldn't come back to study group. Those are some of the things that's in that book. And we, for a few years, we were trying to say, we got to come up with a book that's a little easier for people to swallow if we want to continue with these study groups, right? And then when Browder came out with Now Valley Contributions, and we saw the difference in how people reacted to that book, man, we immediately called Tony and said, Tony, thank you, because the study group needed this book to come out. And we can go from here. We can take them different places, but we needed something that people would not reject immediately. Even though he might have been saying some of the same things Chancellor Williams said, and he was, because Chancellor Williams was one of the people that taught him. But the way that they received it was different. So that's where I would start with them. If somebody is coming at me from a religious point of view, and they've read a couple of things here and there, I might start them with John G. Jackson's Man, God, and Civilization. And then lead them through his next two books, The Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth, and then Christianity Before Christ. And then always ask them, please call me, let's have a discussion about what you're reading. I wouldn't just let them tell them the book and then let them go off by themselves. I would give my number and say, call me. Let's have a discussion about what you read. Because it's important for people who are going, because these books can send people into a crisis. And they need somebody to at least ask questions about what they're reading. And so it's so important that those of us who may have a little bit more knowledge than somebody else be there for them as they're walking through it. Because, listen, like I said, if it wasn't for ASCAC being able to answer some questions for me, my relationship with, like I said, with the head of ASCAC, Nzinga, my relationship of being able to, even when I started to be the priest here, Dr. Jacob Carruthers was very important and instrumental in giving me direction on what things to do, what to look for, what to read, you know. And you know how Dr. Carruthers, he just matter-of-factly tell you something and notice whether you will pursue it or not. Because whether you pursue it or not, then he'll let you go to the next level, right? He won't take you to the next level if he notices that he give you the information and you don't do nothing with it. I learned that from elders. Elders like to watch and see what you're going to do with what they said before they tell you some secrets. And so when he noticed that he gave me an assignment to go look up the Mohawk Conference. And when I came back and asked him questions about the Mohawk Conference, he just smiled and he said, okay, now I can tell you some things. And he gave it to me on the way me taking him back to the airport after he had been in Colombia, and he threw it out there, and just to see. And now I know it was just to see what I was going to do with it. So when I started the temple, he said, "Here's some things you might want to think about." here's some things you might need to start. I mean, right down to giving us our first song. I've been waiting for a songstress to come to sing it. Right? And it's done based on Go Down Moses, but it's based on sinew. The rhythm is in Go Down Moses, but it's based on sinew. And I said, boy, I want a voice to come because I surely would show them that song that Jake Carruthers gave us at the very beginning of the temple. So it's that kind of relationships that has informed me all of my life. And it doesn't matter. I now understand it doesn't matter where it comes from or who it comes from.
All right. Thank you, Baba.
Thank you.
We want to archive something special that was established in 2000, more than 2 decades ago. In upcoming episodes, we will be exploring the history of Christ Universal Temple, its teachings on spirituality and personal growth, and its role in the Columbia, South Carolina community. We invite you to like, comment, and subscribe to receive notifications for future episodes. Thank you for listening.